Welcome to our monthly full council meeting, the last Tuesday of every month. So firstly, welcome to everybody, everyone that's got an interest in issues pertaining to today's agenda. I'll be calling for apologies, but I won't because there are none. We have a full house here today. So please remember, team, that the meeting is being recorded. We do get often complaints that our system's not right up to speed and sometimes very difficult to hear what you as councillors have to say on the webcam. So please make sure your mics are on and speak into your mouthpiece when you are speaking. So being no apologies, which is my right to do, is to, as chair, is to move the agenda around. Now I notice there's a lot of the hard-working people here from the Taupo Hospice Trust here today. So without any further ado, I'm going to move the agenda straight away to agenda item number 8, which is leasing land for the Taupo Hospice to build new premises on. So we'll move straight away to that. And just let me catch up myself. Number 8. We've got Miss Rawley. So I see we've got Miss Rawley here. Welcome, Miss Rawley, and you're, I'm sorry to spring it on you that we're going straight to agenda item number 8. I didn't really think that those good people down the back that have got a lot of work to do wanted to sit here for half an hour and listen to this other stuff ahead of them.
Yeah, I was just wondering if any of the good people down the back who are here from hospice wanted to come forward. You might need to drag a chair with you in case there are any questions from...
So here we have Mr. Gianotti, who's involved in most things good in the community. So welcome to you, Mr. Gianotti. Is that microphone on down here else? I know one works and one doesn't.
Yep, that's on.
Nice blow. All the candles are out. So we'll just hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. We're really pleased to have the opportunity to come and talk to you about what we're on about here. But just first, a little bit of background about the Lake Taupo Hospice Trust and its activities. Because there are some misunderstandings about what hospice does. And I'd just like to make clear that people don't come to hospice to die. People come to hospice who are dying, but they come to live as full a lives as they can of what time they've got left. They come to hospice when medical intervention has pretty well run its course, and they know that there is an inevitable outcome, but it could be some time away. The other misunderstanding is that it's not just cancer people with cancer who come to hospice. It's people with a terminal condition, a life-threatening condition. We have about 60 to 70 patients on average. Naturally, there's quite a high turnover and quite a few deaths each year. The present hospice is located in a building, freehold building that we own, mortgage-free in Sunset Street. And the difficulty is that the need for our services is growing rapidly as we're all aging. And we've really outgrown Sunset Street. And a symptom of that is some of the complaints we know that you have received, because we've received them as well, about parking. Mostly on a Tuesday. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. The hospice basically provides the services, medical and otherwise, that people need to live a full life in their own home amongst their family without having to go and live in a hospital and to die in a hospital. The objective is for people to live and then eventually to die surrounded by their family. And that takes a lot of equipment and a lot of medical support. Pain relief mostly in medical support, but equipment is a big part of the services that hospice provides. We particularly provide electric lazy boys, for instance. I've stopped calling them electric chairs in case there's any misunderstanding. Electric beds, because it gives people that little measure of independence, that with an electric bed and a remote control, they can sit themselves up when they need to and turn themselves over and so on. And often the people who are caring for people who are dying are old themselves and are not physically able to lift and move people. So we provide all of that kind of equipment. We have full-time nurses, 3.5 full-time people equivalent, although there's more actual people than that. And we have about 200 volunteers who actually support the services that the nurses provide. Now, those volunteers, they are the active volunteers who do something for hospice or for patients at least once a week. So they're pretty active people, and it's quite a large number. Lake Taupo Hospice gets a lot of support from its community. They provide things like just to smooth people's way. They provide meals. There's a whole host of volunteers who cook meals and freeze them, and they are delivered if families need them. They chop firewood. We have lawyers who will do enduring powers of attorney and wills, which are often necessary at that time. We have trained biographers who will write people's life stories, and that's often important to families, and it's something positive that a dying person can do. It's something that often gets overlooked, but it's something that the person who eventually dies leaves behind for the family. The most popular service I think we have, apart from massage and those kind of therapies, is what we call our Tuesday Club. On Tuesdays, patients and often their caregivers come up to hospice and they do some kind of activity. Sometimes it's art and craft, sometimes it's listening to a speaker, occasionally it's a visit, and it's so popular that we find that people get off their sick bed and even their deathbed to come. Because they're in a supporting environment and they're with other people in a similar circumstance. So it's empowering and it's non-threatening. But that's when we have our parking problems. A lot of people come to that Tuesday Club. Now, the other possible misunderstanding we want to correct is that a lot of people think that hospice is associated with ambulances and helicopters and late night sirens and things like that. We found that that was a common misconception when we looked at some other sites, like the Tangi Martin site and the Rainbow Point site. We don't have any of that. We don't have any inpatient beds. People come for things like our Tuesday Club. Survivors come for some of our Looking to the Future clubs on a Thursday, run by our social worker. But we don't have anything. We don't have people coming there in an emergency. We don't have ambulances and we don't have sirens or helicopters. So it's the kind of activity that you'd expect around a suburban street anyway. It's not what you'd expect to see around a hospital. We intend to put into our planning the provision for inpatient beds at some time in the future. We don't expect that it'll be very soon. Our intention is if we get to the point where we do need some inpatient beds, we intend to, and we are in the middle of exploring with some of the rest homes who have hospital beds, paying for patients to spend a week or two in those beds rather than providing inpatient beds ourselves. Running a hospital with inpatient beds and all that goes with it is extraordinarily expensive. And we're really trying to avoid doing that. It costs about $500,000 a year to run the Lake Taupo Hospice. We get about $300,000 of that through contracts from the local DHB for the services we provide, and we save, of course, the hospital far more than that, because at roughly $2,000 a day for a hospital bed, every day that through our services people stay in their own homes, it's not only better for them, it saves the DHB an enormous amount of money. But between $300,000 and $500,000, there's $200,000 which we raise ourselves, and we have volunteers who do that. The only other thing I wanted to mention as part of our fundraising, which has been extraordinarily successful because people have supported us so well, is our hospice shop up at the Totra Park Shopping Centre. And there we have about another 40 to 50 volunteers who work there at least once a week. And so the point I would like to just emphasise as I conclude is that we we are a community facility. We think we're an important part of the community, and we believe that the community recognises that and supports us. But we can't continue to live where we are. We have to find ourselves a new site. Mr. Mayor, would it be helpful for me to introduce my colleagues on the trust so that councillors who ask questions will know who they're talking to?
Most welcome, please. Yeah.
We've got Phil Clark, a trustee, Susie Cooper, who's our nurse team leader, clinical nurse leader, Vanilla Hodgkinson, who represents the local iwi health groups, Jeremy Irwin, who's chairman of our development subcommittee, who's been running the whole investigation into where we might move, Dr. Peter Battersby, who's on our trust, and Gavin Robbins, who's our project manager, architect, who's been doing the more technical side of what we've been doing. So, apart from, in addition to the papers that you've got there, Mr. Mayor, our letter and Alison Rawley's very helpful paper, I thought I'd just make those background remarks so that we're all talking about the same thing. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions.
Fine, I'll open it up to my fellow councillors to see what sort of questions of clarity or anything they might like to know. And just Keith, Councillor Craig.
Well done, Maurice. Wonderful work. All of you, fantastic. Can I just ask, is this in competition with the bike park piece of land, Alison, or is it two separate titles?
It's an entirely separate piece of land on a separate title. Okay. They will be immediately adjacent to each other. They'll be neighbours. Yes, so there may be some considerations around that, but both parties are aware of each other's existence.
If I might add,
it does drop down a little bit in there too, where that bike is.
Yes, if I might add, Keith, to your helpful question, the hospice motto is living every moment. In other words, we're about getting the most out of life while your lifespan is now predetermined and shortened. And Susie, who of course we rely on for advice on this aspect, gave a lot of thought to that, and in the end, with her nurses, came to the conclusion that the bike Taupo activities are a feature of life. They're not about, it's something of interest and shows that life does go on. There's not a lot more to say than that, but it has been thought about, but it's not a serious problem.
Life is a cycle.
Yes, it is.
But it's not a bicycle.
That was an unintended pun, was it?
I've got 2 words.
I can't help noticing when I go to funerals, which you do more often at my age, that there's always a babe in arms at a funeral. Life does go on.
Councillor Kirk.
Thank you, Maurice, for your presentation. I see here that the new purpose-built facility will be in the vicinity of about $2 million.
2.5 maybe. It's a little ballpark at the moment, but it's round about that.
And that Sunset Street is currently freehold.
Yes.
You'd be looking to sell that facility?
Yes.
Right. What sort of value is there on Sunset at the moment? How long?
Maybe $500,000.
Well, I'm just trying to think.
Yes.
This is quite a huge commitment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
It's their commitment to make.
Yes.
And we're an integral part of this decision making, so I think I'm allowed to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah. The best thing you can do for us, Councillor, if I might say so, is keep any costs from your side down.
That's right. Yeah.
We know that the Mayor is quite correct. It is a big commitment, and you are correct as well. And we're going into this with our eyes open. We know that we have a task in front of us, but we're here for the long haul. We've been here for many years, and we're not going away, and the need is not going away. And so it's a task that we just have to take on. And we're confident. We think we can do it.
Right, thank you.
There is tremendous support for the hospice in the community. When you anywhere around town you go to buy things, you don't, and they know it's for the hospice. You don't have to ask for a discount. It's offered.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just before I move the suggested resolution, Maurice, I assume you've seen the resolution?
Yes. We have one question to ask and one sort of little comment to make, Councillor.
The other comment I'd just like to make is, because I know you've done the investigation, the geothermal restraints on that particular land. You're happy with your investigations that's been taking place?
Yes. We, as the Mayor will remember, we looked at County Avenue, and the Mayor was a great supporter for us going there, and was clearly going to help us in any way he could. And that's no surprise, but there were question marks about the suitability of the land. And so we decided that we looked at some other possibilities as well to see if there was an alternative, and really there wasn't. And so we decided to spend the $7,000 that was necessary to get geotechnical engineers to drill and establish that you can have a building there, because if there was no point in us spending any other money and then finding we couldn't proceed, it would all have been just wasted. So we spent our $7,000, and we've got a quite clear geotechnical report that there are no insurance or subsidence or other issues involved with what we're proposing to do on that site.
Hospice have paid for that?
Yes. Yep. Now, just before you move...
You said about the resolution?
Yes, if I might. We just want to put on the record the high level of help that we've had from council officers, particularly Alison. We can't speak too highly of the quality of the work that she and the other officers have done. But there is one small part of the proposal that we'd like to comment on. The point has been made in that paper that the lease could be 33 years plus 33, which would be most suitable to us, bearing in mind the level of expenditure that's going to be involved for us, and we don't want to move anyway, away from there. But it does suggest that we bear the costs of the subdivision. Now, we would like to ask you to consider that, and with respect, our view is that the land is owned by the council. It's wasteland at the moment. It's if it is subdivided, there will be more land available for other community activities, and we're wondering if the council would consider paying for the subdivision, since you're going to continue to own the land and we're only going to be lessees anyway. It's part of trying to keep our side of the costs down below that $2.5 million.
So the question, Alison, is the subdivision to separate that particular lot from the County Avenue big site?
To enable a
lease
for
yeah,
more
yeah.
than 35 years,
Yeah. Okay.
we need to have a separate title.
And do we know the cost of that subdivision?
Unless the Hospice Trust have done some investigation themselves.
Would be,
Sorry,
Mr. Chairman, our processing costs for council would be in the vicinity of probably $1,500, and then there would be the preparation of the consent, which I'm told could be around that sort of $10,000 mark.
I think to address that part of that you've raised there, Mr. Gianotti, this is probably not the format to do it. I think you'll probably find going into the future, especially with the good work that hospice do, that you would always be met with favour rather than the other. But I think if we get this deal done here today, that would be something you would need to perhaps come to the annual plan next year or the long-term plan. Let's get this underway. You've got 33 years to worry about. The intentions are all written there, and they would be, they would be binding on all parties. So I think that would be the place to look at some sort of grant or in the annual plan process or something like that. So I don't think we can address that issue here today. So if we can do that, but have it minuted, that's about as far as I can go on that. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks for the presentation and for the obvious support you've got here today too. It's great to see from the community. Just one question. In the officer's report here, there's a statement, may prefer the option to charge a community rental or even a market rental at some date in the future. And obviously, you want to keep the costs down, and council are quite committed to that. The only reason I raised the question and ask how you feel about that is because obviously there'll be councils in the future who may see things differently or may not. But just that obviously doesn't lock them in quite as far as what I can accept the fact you're wanting the long-term lease and understand the reasoning behind that. So I was just curious how you feel about that option, that comment.
We're a client here. We don't make the rules, and we accept that. And we are beholden to the council, and we're grateful for that. In the best of all worlds, Councillor Henderson, we'd have a 33 plus 33 at a peppercorn rental, but we do accept there are some realities here, and a future council might be more cash strapped than this one. I have no comment to make. I couldn't possibly comment on that. That is our preference, but really, in the end, it's up to what the council decides. If you can see your way clear to put into the original lease, and I imagine the Mayor's right, that those kind of discussions will take place when we're discussing the lease itself. What I see happening today is an agreement or an offer in principle to have the hospice there as a community hospice, and the details like that will be negotiated later. And at that point, we would certainly be trying to persuade the council to agree that the total lease be at a peppercorn rental. But we do accept that amount of time is a long way in the future, and I find it difficult to envisage what it might be like next year, let alone in 66 years.
I guess the thing I was looking for was to hear if it affected your bigger picture plan and the operation. It doesn't sound like it does in the bigger scheme of things.
It wouldn't stymie it.
Thanks.
Just before I go back to Councillor Hickling, I just want to say that, again, thank you very much for the presentation. I think you know as well as I do, Councillor Hickling and I were a sort of a little bit of a ad hoc committee put together to work with this. I guess it's been 3 years. I know in the very early stages I was adamant we've got to get down here. It faces north. It's a beautiful place, the river, and all the biking and the noises from young people, they're not all that bad when you get old, you know.
Particularly if you don't have beds.
But it's also a very great place, having been involved in hospice when I lost my dad and that, to be able to go for a walk somewhere with family and that sort of. I think this is an absolutely brilliant place. And I know Councillor Hickling, we work together, we work with you guys, and we're really supportive of this, and I'm really pleased to see this come to fruition before the end of this triennium. Councillor Hickling wanted to be the mover on it. He asked me before, and I'm going to allow that. I'm also going to ask that I could second it. I don't normally second things, but I'm going to ask that I can. But I know that Councillor Hickling would like to make a small alteration to the resolution, which is on page 8(3). So I'll hand back to you, Councillor Hickling.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like other councillors to consider under the lease rental not being 5 years but 10 years as a peppercorn rental, which will give hospice some leeway into this lease. So with that amendment, Your Worship, if other councillors agree to that, I would like to move the suggested resolution.
And I would like to second it. Do we have any support from the fellow councillors to the amendment and to the resolution? All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you very, very much. Let's go build it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll do our best.
And we'll help as much as we can.